Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another Pokemon Sun and Moon Movesets video. Today's video is going to be all about this little guy you see on the screen right here, known as Pyukumuku. So let's get started by taking a look at this Pokemon's typing, abilities, and stats. So to start things off, Pyukumuku is a water-type Pokemon that has access to two pretty awesome abilities, the first of which being Innards Out, which is this Pokemon's signature ability, and one that works very similarly to the way Aftermath works, and when this Pokemon goes down on the battlefield, it damages its opponent. Now the good thing about Innards Out though, however, is that it works with any type of move, whereas Aftermath I believe only works when your opponent takes you out with a contact move. But the other cool thing about Innards Out is it's HP dependent, meaning that if you have 100 HP and your opponent takes you out, you then do 100 HP worth of damage to your opponent, which can be very useful in a variety of situations because this Pokemon could actually be brought in on a setup sweeper that has already acquired a ton of boosts and just faint and take its opponent down with it because it will lose all of its HP. As for its second ability though, it's another great one in the form of Unaware, which allows this Pokemon to ignore its opponent's stat boosts, which also can be a very useful ability in preventing setup sweepers from taking your entire team out because this Pokemon will ignore those stat boosts. For its stats though, this Pokemon has base 55 HP, which in itself is fairly low. However, its physical and special defense are base 130, allowing this Pokemon to take hits extremely well. Its attacking stats, on the other hand, are base 60 physical attack and 30 special attack. However, as you will see in a second, this Pokemon doesn't have access to any attacking moves that actually directly damage its opponents. So these attacking stats are pretty much worthless on this thing, so do keep that in mind. But the last thing to also note about Pyukumuku is that it has a base 5 speed stat, tying it for the slowest Pokemon in the game with Shuckle, so do keep that in mind as the fact that this Pokemon will be very slow on the battlefield. But with that, let's take a look at the first moveset that I have for you in this video. So for this first moveset, we're going to begin by giving Pyukumuku a bold nature to increase its physical defense but lower its physical attack, and then going with either the Innards Out or Unaware ability, depending upon how you want to use this Pokemon. There are advantages to both, so do keep that in mind. For the EVs though, we're going to run a mixed defensive EV spread to allow this Pokemon to have as much mixed bulk as possible to take both physical and special hits very well. So we're going to put 252 EVs into its HP, 64 into its physical defense, and 192 into its special defense. As to the item, we're either going to go with Leftovers to allow this Pokemon to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn, a Rocky Helmet to damage any opponent that wants to hit this Pokemon with a contact move, or running Dark EMZ to be used in combination with one move on this set. But for the moves, the first two that we're going to be going with are going to be Soak and Toxic. Soak being an ability that allows it to turn its opponent into a water-type Pokemon, thus allowing it the free ability to Toxic whatever comes in on this guy. It's also important to note that Soak will be very useful in potentially forcing your opponent's type to change, thus making all of their stab attacks not actually stab attacks anymore. So this will allow this Pokemon to take hits from those Pokemon very easily because they don't have that added bonus. But Soak and Toxic are kind of staples of how this Pokemon is going to be able to deal damage to its opponents because, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have any direct attacking moves. For the third move slot though, there are quite a few options to go with, all with their advantages. The first of which being Counter, which is a move that allows this Pokemon to deal physical damage back at its opponent, thus making this Pokemon actually pretty capable of hitting physical attackers very hard through the use of Counter. Another option is using Protect to allow this Pokemon to get additional HP recovery through Leftovers, potentially scout moves, and also rack up a little bit more toxic damage for free. Its third option in this third move slot is potentially also Gastro Acid, which is a unique move that I don't really see used too often, but allows it to suppress the ability of its opponents. So for example, if you're thinking to yourself, well, Soak and Toxic, that's great and all, but what if my opponent has Magic Guard? Well, Gastro Acid will actually nullify Magic Guard so that those Pokemon that have that ability will actually be damaged by Toxic. And when you use this in combination with Unaware, you are pretty much the biggest stop in the world to something like Magic Guard Calm Mind Clefable or Magic Guard Calm Mind Reuniclus. So do keep that in mind. Another option could be Baton Pass to allow this Pokemon to switch out of battle a little bit easier, allowing you to gain some switch initiative, which is very useful because this Pokemon is so slow. So that is another way to also allow this Pokemon to take a hit and then switch out because it's not going to be faster than most things. We could also run Pain Split in this third move slot to allow this Pokemon to average its HP with its opponent, which works especially well in combination with the Innards Out ability, because if you do Pain Split and then your opponent takes you out, you're pretty much guaranteed to kill that Pokemon because their HP was just what yours was at. But for the last third option, we're going to run Memento here to work in combination with Dark EMZ. And if you don't know how this works, Memento in itself lowers your opponent's physical and special attack by 2 stages at the cost of sacrificing this Pokemon. But when you use it with Dark EMZ, the Pokemon you bring in actually has its HP recovered all the way up to full, similarly to the way that Healing Wish works. So it could be another useful way to make use of Pyukumuku. For its last move slot though, we're going to be running some type of recovery move. So Recover is going to be here to obviously give you a consistent 50% of your HP, but Pain Split again is another option to allow you to regain HP and also potentially make use of the Innards Out ability a little bit more effectively. As to this next moveset, we're going to be running Pyukumuku strictly as a Baton Passer. So we're going to start this one off by giving it a Bold Nature and the same EV spread as before with either the Innards Out or Unaware ability. But for the item on this set, running Leftovers or Rocky Helmet like before, or running Normalium Z, Poisonium Z, or a Weakness Policy to kind of change how this Pokemon passes its stat boost to another member of its team. But for the first move on this set, we're going to be running either Curse, Purify, or Soak, depending really upon what item you want to go with if you want to make use of one of the Z items or the Weakness Policy. Curse is a move that increases your physical attack and your physical defense by 1 stage, while also simultaneously lowering your speed. And for a lot of Baton Passers, that isn't necessarily a good thing to lower your speed stat. So the way that we remedy this is by using Baton Pass with Normalium Z, which when doing so will actually remove the speed reductions that you have acquired while boosting up with Curse, effectively allowing you to just be Baton Passing the physical attack and physical defense boosts you acquired through using Curse, which is very cool. On the other hand, using Purify with Poisonium Z actually makes it so that this Pokemon increases all of its stats by 1 stage. However, I do think that this might actually be banned because I know that there is some new Baton Pass rule based around possibly boosting your speed and another stat simultaneously. So I'm not sure if you can actually legally do this in Smogon singles, so do keep that in mind. But if you're just going to go with the Weakness Policy item as a way to just take a super effective hit, which this Pokemon definitely can do because of its really high defenses, running Soak in this first move slot is going to just be your option to go with here to make it very similarly to the first set, but then obviously wanting to Baton Pass off the boost that you get from Weakness Policy. For your third move though, we're going to either run Toxic, Counter, or Pain Split as a way to give this Pokemon some way of dealing some damage to its opponents. Soak and Toxic obviously potentially working in combination again with each other if you do go with the Weakness Policy item. But for the last move, again, running Recover or Pain Split to allow this Pokemon to have some recovery and potentially also make use of the Innards Out ability when used in combination with Pain Split a little bit more effectively. However, when boosting with this Pokemon, having the Unaware ability can be very effective because it essentially allows you to boost up for free against anything that might also simultaneously want to be boosting up against you because they know that Pyukumuku doesn't have any attacking moves. So do keep that in mind, as this can be a very useful thing to have in your mind while using this Pokemon. As to this last moveset, we're going to be running Pyukumuku as a dual screener. So again, we're going to be going with the same nature and mixed defensive EV spread as on the previous 2 sets, choosing again either between the Innards Out or Unaware ability. But for the item, again going with Leftovers or Rocky Helmet, or potentially running the Light Clay item on this Pokemon as well, to extend the turns of its first 2 moves, Light Screen and Reflect, from 5 to 8, thus supporting your team for a longer period of time. As for your third option though, again, Toxic, Counter, and Pain Split are there to allow you to deal some damage to your opponents, which this Pokemon normally can't do because, as mentioned before, it doesn't learn any direct attack moves. But Baton Pass, again, could be an option here as a way to give this Pokemon a slow way of switching out of battle by then taking a hit and then switching into an appropriate counter after it has set up its screens. But for the last move, again running Recover or Pain Split to allow this Pokemon to regain HP, potentially either making use of the Innards Out ability more effectively through Pain Split, or just recovering its HP, allowing it to set up screens multiple times throughout the battle and support its teammates defensively. But anyways, everybody, That is it for this video, so I hope you enjoyed all 3 of these movesets for this very unique and interesting new Pokemon. I find this to be one of the coolest ones to make sets for, because I've never actually had to make a moveset video for a Pokemon that doesn't learn any direct attacks, which I found really fun to do. But I hope you all enjoyed as always, everybody, and please take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.